I'm David Sharpe and was a Carey boy for most of the 1960s. My maths teacher in 1967 was Frank Roland Potts, then aged 71, he having been born in 1896. As far as I know, Frank is probably Carey's only direct link to World War I. Frank's story is one of thousands, but for me, he is the one who triggered my interest in World War I. I have since been to Gallipoli and recently toured all the major Western Front battlefields of France and Belgium, including, of course, the battlefields where Frank fought. Frank was one of over 400,000 young men from Australia who volunteered to fight in World War I. At that time, Australia had a population of under 5 million. Over 60,000 Aussies were killed in World War I, and Frank was one of the 156,000 wounded or taken prisoner. Frank enlisted on 3 January 1916, well after the war had started. He was a 20-year-old single uni student in Adelaide of medium build. Now remember, Gallipoli was 1915, so when Frank enlisted, he knew what he was in for. Frank became a sapper in the 13th Field Company Australian Engineers, being part of the 4th Australian Infantry Division, the CO of which was until 1916 Brigadier General John Monash. This division was active on the Western Front in France and Belgium. There's no more dangerous job than a sapper. A sapper is a soldier who performs engineering duties such as breaching fortifications, preparing field defences and trenches, laying and clearing landmines, and road repairs. It was in this role Frank found himself on the Western Front in France and was involved in the famous battlefields of Bullecourt and Polygon Wood. He was also involved in the Flanders Offensive. It was in the 8-day Battle of Polygon Wood on 28 September 1917 that Frank was seriously injured and 3 of his mates were killed. They were Sapper Lewis Thornton, Sapper Herbert Waugh and Captain Robert Park. They were improving front trench fortifications at the time. Frank told me that the German mortar which hit their trench was known as a whiz-bang. There were 5,700 Aussie casualties in that battle, which has been described as mud, madness and senseless slaughter. Frank was removed from the battlefield by stretcher bearers and taken to a field hospital. His wounds were shrapnel wounds to his left arm, his hand and the left side of his head. As a schoolboy, I remember Frank's partial deafness and severely scarred left hand. Frank returned to Australia on 12 March 1918 before the war's end, on 11 November 18, when the German surrenders came forward. He was discharged from the army on 1st July 1918. Frank saw the worst of it: industrial warfare, death and injuries on a vast scale. On his return, Frank obtained a Bachelor of Science from Adelaide University and eventually took on maths teaching. He even authored a maths textbook for teachers and students, quite a number actually, in the 1950s and 60s. Fortunately for us, he came to Carey in the early 1960s from Wesley when he was in his 70s. He was our Year 10 maths teacher and we all loved his war stories more than maths. Most days we wouldn't settle into a maths class until Frank told us a war story. Like all other teachers, Frank was a good man who helped make us all who we are today. With the help of a friend, Terry Phillips, I found a trove of information on Frank's war service, which makes fascinating reading. Go to the links accompanying this video for his service history, photographs of the ships he went to war on and came back on, his medals and the full service details. There's also a nice little story by one of my classmates, Bill Summons. Bill describes how Frank caught out in the cricket nets at Carey one boy named Graham Yollett, who went on to become Australia's Test captain. Maybe Frank learnt that skill catching German hand grenades, who knows. Now, by following the exploits of just one digger, much can be learnt of World War I, and I thank Frank for that.